Welcome to Serenity Wealth Now with Chris Cooper. This is not your typical financial radio show. As a licensed CPA, insurance agent, and investment advisory representative, Chris coaches his clients on a holistic view of financial well-being with an objective of providing a complete financial strategy to fund life's goals. Chris is here to guide you down the path to the financial serenity you deserve. Now, here's Chris Cooper.
All right, folks. Good morning. Happy Sunday. And in studio with me today, we have special guest right back with us again, Shona McIntyre, Community Care Connections. How are you, Shona?
I'm good. Thanks for having me back.
Absolutely. Well, you've got some exciting news to share. So I'm staring right here at a cool book cover that you are involved in. So The Caregiver's Advocate. So tell me a little bit about this.
Yeah, so I'm so excited. This is the second volume. The first volume came out in 2024 and it went over really well. It's different authors talking about different topics, but it's mostly just geared towards families who are acting as the active caregiver for an aging loved one. So this is volume 2. Incredibly
important. Now, so obviously folks that have heard you on our show before know this already, but let us know exactly what do you do for the caregivers out there?
Yeah, so Senior Community Connections, we are a resource for families when they're looking to start touring or even they know that their loved one's declining and they're not really quite sure what the next step should be. So we sit down with the families and help them kind of figure out if, they need assisted living, memory care. We figure out their finances, what they can afford, and then we do the search for them and we help them find their best fit. We do all of the footwork for them, so they just have to show up on the tours, and then at the end, they decide which one is going to be the best fit for their loved one.
Sure. Well, and you've got a good resource on the financial side to help you out on
I
that,
do,
don't you?
yes.
Yeah, that was me, in case you guys didn't realize that on the radio waves. I was being a lame little plug for myself there. So, no, it's so important, and it's very emotional, the conversation. So I talk a lot about goals, objectives, having fun, leaving a legacy to the people we want it to go to. We also know we're going to pass away. And when you know you're going to pass away, you plan for your estate plan, right? We put it off longer than we should, right? Everyone should have an estate plan, even if you are anyone with children under age 18, you should really have a trust because you want to make sure it doesn't go straight to your child, right? So these are important conversations that we are happy to talk about. The one that we don't like to talk about is incapacitation. Inability to lose, our loss of control. And that is the hardest one for us to have a discussion with. And quite frankly, you see people and help people through that probably when they didn't necessarily plan in advance. Most people do not plan for this conversation in advance.
Correct.
So what percentage of people do you think that you've seen actually do plan kind of and have this conversation with people in advance?
Oh my gosh, I would say maybe 5%.
Gosh, that's too low. Yeah, it's just too low. And so on the financial side, we need to make sure we do some things to plan for that, have those kind of conversations, make sure we mitigate that risk because ultimately it releases some of that burden on our loved ones, right? So one of the things that I know about you, because we've talked about this many times, when people need help and they need support and they call like the 1-800 phone numbers that exist out there, you're just basically getting blown up with all the different, communities that are out there. Your approach is quite different. Yes. When they call you, you take a little bit more of a proactive style approach, right?
Yes, it's definitely individualized for each individual family.
Yeah.
Everybody's so different. You can have 2 seniors with the same dementia diagnosis, but their needs are so vastly different. And one community that might be a right fit for somebody may not be the best fit for their neighbor. So I really help hone in on what's going to be the best fit for that particular person.
So you spend a lot of your time investigating and researching the right homes in the area.
Yes.
Right.
That is the biggest part of my job is knowing every community, what their levels of care that they can provide, financially, how much do they cost?
Yep.
And bottom line is, how is the care? At the end of the day, you're spending a lot of money and you better make sure that they're providing quality care.
And ultimately, that's what we really want. First and foremost, and guys, I'll tell you, I see it all the time. People come in, they get worried about how they're going to afford this. But their first thing, they always kind of talk about the financial concern. But buried deeper than that is that I need my loved one to be taken care of.
Yes.
Right? first and foremost. So that's important because not all communities have that reputation.
No, unfortunately, back in before pre-COVID days, there was about 50 brand new communities that just came on the scene. And unfortunately, most of them are not providing, the kind of care that they're promising.
Yeah.
So my job is to weed through the communities. You walk in and they're beautiful and they have a great sales pitch, but at the end of the day, what kind of care are they actually providing?
Right.
And that's my job, to do the research, pull the state records, talk to people that I know that work in the industry that are in and out of these communities all the time, talk to the families that actually live there,
right,
and let me know what's really going on, if they're actually providing that care that they're promising.
Well, and that due diligence and research you do, seeing that from multiple angles, you get a good feel for that not everyone's going to pick up on all those things.
Right. Those little nuances that the average person doesn't know to look for.
Mm-hmm.
When I worked in the industry, unfortunately, not every community I worked for provided good care. And it was really hard to sell that community to a family coming in. And they would have me, stage activities and do things because they knew a tour was coming in. So there's a lot. And I didn't like doing that. I refused to. And it made me a bad salesperson. So there's, they're trained to sell to families that are in a very vulnerable spot. And they say all the right things. But at the end of the day, I know what kind of care. And to be quite frank, I don't even bring my clients to those communities.
Well, and that's, I think, one of the things that I was so impressed with your process is when I have somebody that I know we've done put the plan in place and we need to now find that place for mom or their spouses, it's that time to start thinking about things. They're not going to tour a bunch of places. Mm-hmm. They're going to know, you're going to know in advance the criteria that makes sense, where they are a good fit for, and you're going to narrow that search down to where your phone's not ringing with every community that's around.
Right.
You're making those phone calls. You're setting up that tour, and it's a little bit more personalized.
Yes, and they actually go through me too, because again, you can get bombarded with a lot of different phone calls.
Yeah.
You don't know what's right. You don't know what's wrong. So all of the correspondence happens through me. With permission, of course, I will share your information with the community once you've agreed that you want to go tour the community. And they can follow up after the tour to see how the visit was.
Right. But that's part of your whole process as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that makes sense. And the cool thing about this, folks, is what you do isn't something that the client actually pays for. The community actually pays for your services at the end of the day.
Yes.
So, which is incredibly valuable.
It's a free service, which is great. You do have to be able to afford to move to a community.
Sure.
When people hear the word free, they call me, which I do help. All of my services are free. So even if you have Medicaid or you need a Medicaid assistance, I will still help you find that fit. But the community will pay me a percentage of the first month's rent. Yeah.
And let's talk. So Medicaid, right? I mean, if that is your option, it's an option. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people, and I handle this on the financial side, when I talk about long-term care, it's an emotional thing and it's a big deal. If you have resources, you have assets, you need to plan for long-term care concerns. You need to protect your assets, protect your objectives, protect your loved ones, protect the level of care. But if you don't, or you're close to that Medicaid threshold, if you will, and that's your option, you should still reach out. Yes. Because I'm one of the, and I know you're the same way. I can't turn down somebody who needs guidance when I know I can help them, because most of the people that are in the financial community just don't understand the options that are out there.
Absolutely.
And I know you feel the same way on your side of the fence as well.
100%. There's a ton of skilled nursing communities. And the first thing most people don't realize in the state of Missouri is Medicaid only covers skilled nursing level care,
right,
not assisted living.
Yeah.
So it's a sticker shock to them because they, in the back of their mind, they think their loved one's going to assisted living.
Mm-hmm.
They have to go to skilled nursing.
Yeah.
So even with that, there's a limited amount of skilled nursing that actually accept Medicaid.
Mm-hmm.
And the ones that do, what's their reputation?
Right.
And sometimes we just got to get in at a community and we know in the back of our mind the reputation isn't the best, but they have an open, available bed. So that's why financial planning is so important in the long run.
And if that is where you're going to be, there are options. I mean, there are ways, and we can work with estate and elder law attorneys. Sean and I both work with them to get you into a Medicaid eligible situation quicker. In Missouri, it is I'm going to ballpark it here. It's, call it $5,000 that the sick spouse or the individual needing assistance can have. And then it's like $150,000 of community kind of properties. And that's the max, right? So essentially, poor from a Medicaid perspective, which we call it poor on paper, if you will. If you have less than $155,000, then you could become Medicaid eligible, roughly. Okay. Changes every year with inflation. We need to get you there quicker is ultimately the plan there. But if your thought process is, I've got $1 million or, $500,000 and I'm just going to be on Medicaid. Well, guess what? That's the maximum. So you got to spin that down. You got to do some things differently. And quite frankly, it might be more efficient to plan in advance.
Yes.
And have a better strategy in place. Because if you have an option, I don't think you want to be on the Medicaid community side of things.
You do not. Most people don't realize that when you go into a skilled nursing facility, it's a room smaller than the studio that we're in.
Yeah.
You share a room with
you dogging on my studio.
No.
I mean, that's a decent size.
It's great. No, but if you wanted to live here full time with another roommate,
well, that's the thing. It's roommates. Yeah. We'll talk for 30 minutes here and it gets a little stuffy, right? So I can only imagine,
Right. Yeah. So yeah, people don't realize you're in a small room with another person and you're sharing a room because you don't get a private room with Medicaid. And your options are limited. Yeah.
And then that means where the community is located. Right. Is it in your community? Does that make sense? Right. And then obviously that level of care is the first and foremost. And you're going to get more personalized attention. And it's definitely not going to be at home. Right. That is for sure. Yeah. So very important. It's an important conversation to have because you want to make sure your family knows your objectives too. Now, I think that's something we'll talk a little bit about. I've noticed a generational shift where we're a little bit more open to having conversations from a financial perspective and from a desires and level of care perspective. We're a little bit more open today than we used to be.
Yeah.
Have you noticed that?
Yeah, I definitely think, even in the last 15, 20 years, I've noticed that people, they know their parents' finances pretty well.
Yeah.
There's some people that are still a little more guarded and they have to go back and figure out how much money they actually have. But most people are aware. It's good to make your family aware of what your plans are and how much money you have to work with.
And I know you mentioned that 15, 20. I notice a very significant shift when I talk to somebody that's in their later 70s today versus somebody that's in like their early 60s, just from a willingness to share. My younger folks tend to be more, hey, you know what, you should talk to my kiddos, or, let's get them involved in this decision. I need them to be a part of that. It's a little bit more open. I think that there is just a generational shift that took place.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and I think they helped their parents. And
that's part
they
of it,
didn't have the tools to help them, and it was digging and investigating. And when, when your loved one is, cognitively declined and you don't know how much money they have in their account,
it's tough.
It's hard.
Yeah, it's tough. So we were talking a little bit off air. Ozzy Osbourne recently in the headlines passed away. People forget about this. He had Parkinson's. And, I know a lot of Parkinson's stuff. I think about it all the time. My grandmother was Parkinson's, and I actually forgot that, what they call him, the Prince of Darkness, had Parkinson's. Maybe it's good that, the Prince of Darkness had a memory concern. So, he did some crazy things in his youth.
Yeah.
So, but, we stopped to think about that. And, he lived a hard life, did a lot of crazy things, and had Parkinson's, but he had somebody in his life that really took very good care of his estate. And she did a great job. I was just reading an article about this. She planned, and she planned very well.
Yeah.
So it's just neat to see, there's a lot of celebrity stories out there that they don't think about it. They don't plan. They don't put things in the right place. And you wouldn't think about it. Would you think that Ozzy Osbourne would be, astute business planning?
Sharon's a smart businesswoman.
She's the one behind it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and what do you say? But behind every successful man, there's a smart spouse taking over.
Yep.
Right. In your case, you're both.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So, yeah, it's neat to see that. Unfortunately, you see that the harsh side of it with the passing away, but it's nice to see that the cool side of we had somebody that actually planned in advance. And I don't know that I would have given Ozzy Osbourne that much credit for being having all those affairs in order.
Right. He had a smart lady that was thinking about those things, so he didn't have to.
Yeah. Well, and their life was public and TV and all that other stuff too. And they still took that time to have those conversations.
Yeah.
Now, I think that's kind of with the Parkinson's thing. Maybe, and we were talking a little bit about this too, that drives you to think about that in advance. You know, do you notice something like that?
Absolutely. When you are given a diagnosis,
Yeah.
and you have a possible expiration date coming up, you want to do everything in your power to make sure everything's taken care of.
Because all of a sudden it becomes real, right? We have a Parkinson's diagnosis. We know we're fine today. You know, take a look at Michael J. Fox, for example, right? I mean, his story is amazing. If you've ever watched his documentary, phenomenal. And I'm sure you've seen it. It's great. I think it's on Netflix. If you haven't seen it, you should check that out. It is wonderful, folks. But he uses his humor because he's just a very smart and funny guy. But he's, you know, when you have that diagnosis, it forces you to think about what's going to happen and to put those plans in place. And unfortunately, when that diagnosis occurs, you also lose some options.
Yeah.
You know? So the best time to think about this and plan for that is probably today.
Absolutely.
Wherever you are, right? Wherever you are. And it's, you know, estate planning involved. It's making sure that you understand your goals and concerns and all of those different factors. Most of the nicer communities you see, they're not Medicaid communities, are they?
Correct.
Yeah. So people tend to want to start with, you know, if you need assistance, assisted living. I think we were talking a little bit about that earlier as well.
Yeah.
I think it helps from a, you know, pocketbook perspective and also quality of life perspective, right?
Yes. Long run, most assisted living communities now are skilled. They're a level 2, so they can take somebody that maybe needs more care.
Okay.
So they eventually don't have to move to a skilled nursing facility.
Sure.
But what I see happen a lot is people put that decision off for whatever reason, guilt, which is what the book chapter is about.
Yeah.
They put it off to the point to where there's a major event that occurred, stroke, a major fall, and then they're no longer able to go to assisted living because their needs are so much higher.
Right.
Now, if they lived in the community and they had a stroke or a major fall, then, you know, the communities are going to allow them to stay and age in place. But to go straight from the hospital bedside to a community, they would not physically qualify, and that's going to put you in skilled nursing territory.
Gotcha.
So there's some state regulations that prevent people from moving into an assisted living if they're more than a 2-person transfer.
Okay.
You can stay in a community if you're a 2-person transfer and get extra care. But there's just a lot of little nuances that people are not aware of. So they wait too long.
Well, and sometimes that assisted living gives you just enough level of care to prolong that next stage, right?
Right.
Because you just get a little bit of assistance. And that can make a lot of the difference.
Absolutely.
And I think diagnoses tend to, and people, especially dementia related, the more moves you make, the harder it is.
Yes, absolutely. I see folks that, you know, they call it community hopping. You know, they start off at a community. They think because it's in their neighborhood, it's going to be a good fit, or price point's better. They move in. They realize very quickly that they're not providing the care. So then they hop to the next one, then the next one. And I get a lot of calls from families who are living in a community. They made the wrong choice because they didn't know. They had no idea. They were just sold a bill of goods from the salesperson. And then they have to move them again. So I educate the families and let them know, you know, yes, we can move them, but you're going to see a decline again. With every move, there's a decline. So you're taking that risk. We could either try to work it out and I can go back to the community to see if I can help save it to where they can stay. But 9 times out of 10, we need to find a better community. Yeah.
So, all right. So you just mentioned a word that I know full well, guilt. My wife, this is like, she's just that Catholic guilt thing. It's a real thing, folks. And the Catholics that are listening, they go, oh yeah, I get it. This Catholic guilt, it's real.
It is.
So the guilt is what your chapter in this book is really all about. And so talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So when I was approached to do this book, you know, I didn't want to just talk about placing a loved one in a community because anyone can talk about that. I wanted to really focus in on the driving prevention on why people don't move forward.
Sure.
9 times out of 10 is because of the guilt factor.
Yeah.
There's so many things to feel guilty about. You've promised your loved one that you would never move them in a community. You feel guilty because you can't visit and be there as often, and your mom or dad's sitting alone all day, unattended, and you don't know what's happening when you're not there.
Sure.
Then there's guilt once you move them into a community and it's maybe not going very well, or it was the wrong fit.
Yeah.
So,
is there some guilt that maybe you can't take care of your loved one either? Like
absolutely.
that's, it makes sense.
Yes.
We feel like we should be there for them.
100%. So there's so much guilt involved in making this big, huge decision. And people, instead of making the decision, they just don't do anything. So by not making a decision, they say you're making a decision.
You are. Absolutely.
And then they're staying home. And, so in my chapter, I talk about, it's a beautiful story of a family that I worked with, how guilt was the driving factor on everything that they did or did not do.
Yeah.
And I tell the story of their mom and kind of what happened when they were home, and then walk them through once we found the community and just the change that she had once we found the right fit. Not every community is going to be great. And, I've seen communities contribute to people's health issues. So that's why it's so important to find the right one. But going back to the guilt feature, there's so much of it, and it doesn't go away just because you place someone in a community. You're still going to have it, just shifts.
Sure.
So we talk about that, and I give you some tools on how to work through that. So you're not just not making a decision and just waiting for a big event to occur to make a move.
Well, and there's a lot of support groups out there as well that do help with some of that, but it's human nature to feel guilty in those kinds of things. These are not conversations we like to have. In fact, losing control is, like I said earlier when I started the show, it's my client's least favorite thing to talk about. But those that have witnessed it with a loved one, they know they have to.
Yeah.
Right. It's those folks that, we feel like we're invincible. We just don't want to ever feel like we're going to lose our ability to have capacity to make decisions. But we live longer lives now.
Absolutely.
We have to think about these things.
Yeah, I have a client right now who's 105, and
incredible.
Up until just about a few weeks ago, she was doing great at home. And now the family has shifted and decided we need to start looking for a community.
Yeah.
So
and hopefully you've prepared, right?
Yes.
And it's not something that is, you don't have to have, we're not saying put every duck in a row, because you don't know what the future holds, but have an honest conversation with professionals. If you have a financial advisor in your life, you should talk about that. If their answer is you have enough assets to never run out of money, you should probably get a secondary opinion, because it's not, long-term care costs are incredibly expensive and transition the entire basis of your portfolio. So what are you seeing in costs today?
So it seems like it stabilized a little bit this year.
Yeah.
I know the last couple of years, on average, a community will raise their costs anywhere between 1% to 3% every year.
Yep.
There's an annual increase. Last year, I saw anywhere between 7 to 19% increase.
19%. Holy cow.
Because they have to pay for caregivers.
Right.
And, now that people can drive for Uber and make a really good living doing that, it's harder to find quality caregivers at $15
And it's a tough job.
Absolutely. So communities have had to get smarter about what they're going to pay their staff.
Yeah.
So, and when that happens, the cost of increase goes up. The cost of food has gone up. Everything's gone up. So,
and it never comes down. Isn't that weird?
It doesn't.
Yeah. That inflation thing.
And you think because you're going into a community that's very expensive and you're paying, for all of this care, that you're going to get good quality care. And that's not always necessarily the case. You're still paying for it, and it's very expensive, but the quality is horrible.
Yeah. I mean, it's not unheard of. I mean, just for folks that haven't thought about this, $10,000 per month is not an unrealistic number.
No.
So it's very realistic. And depending on what you're looking for and the level of service and level of care needs, $10,000 is actually relatively inexpensive.
Yeah.
So you get into the memory cares, you're probably into the teens pretty quickly.
Yeah. So I know with memory care right now, I think the least expensive community is about $8,500 a month.
Okay.
For memory care.
And that's fairly basic level then.
Yeah. That's about, and on average, it's about $9,500 a month.
That's not, I've heard more.
Yeah.
So
it
that's
depends
good.
on the community. Some do levels of care, some do all inclusive. So those are the other little things that most families aren't aware of is, when you're going into a community, how do they price things?
Right.
Because it could be way more. You go in at a lower rate, but then as you need more assistance, the levels of care kick in and you're going to pay more.
Yep. So, all right. So, your book coming out It's actually available August, right?
Yes.
So where can we get this book?
Yeah, you can go, you can find it on Amazon or
I say Amazon.
Amazon.
Yeah, I don't know why. I think it was my kid. He made a mistake. Like he saw it and he goes, "Ooh, I can get that on Amazon." I'm like, "What is Amazon?" And I'm like, "Well, that's going to stick."
Yeah.
I think that's nice.
That's
I think they had an opportunity there and they messed up.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. So Amazon.
Yeah, so it is available on Amazon.
Yes, or you
right?
can go to my website at seniorcommunityconnections.net and you can purchase it from there. And it's not just me, it's other authors as well. There's 19 different authors and we all have a different perspective. We all give tools on how to, if you're caring for an aging loved one at home,
Sure.
It just gives you some tools and resources to help you get through because it is an overwhelming, exhausting to care for a senior. Well,
and these are great things to have. So take a look at this book, read through some of those chapters. And I think the key thing is, not everyone there is local, right? Shauna's local. Finding those local relationships that can be of service to you in your community, I think is just so important.
Yes. And that's a great thing about what I do is I just don't do placement. I have lots of other resources. So if they need a financial planner, an attorney, anything they need, I vet everybody to make sure that they're going to work with seniors and make sure they're providing.
And there's a very different level when, let's talk about the estate planning process, right? Attorneys, some of them specialize in various different aspects. Elder law and Medicaid planning is a very specific thing. And if you've got the wrong relationship there, it can change the entire framework of what you're trying to do.
Absolutely.
It's incredibly important. So knowing those resources, knowing what they have the experience doing is going to ultimately make it more efficient on their process, which saves you time. And that's a huge deal when you're trying to figure out that move in a crisis mode.
Yeah.
We call it crisis planning, unfortunately. But that's not the answer. The answer isn't crisis planning, is it, Shona?
It's not. Let's plan in advance.
Plan in advance, right? Plan in advance. And that's, I know, something that you focus on as well. So, all right. So, Shona, thank you so much for coming in. Check this book out on Amazon, The Caregiver's Advocate, or on Shauna's website. Shona, we'll be talking to you again. I think this is an important conversation to revisit. So you guys will hear Shona come in and be a frequent guest on our show, especially during the holidays. It's a great time to think about. We tend to see our families a little bit more and we can see some of those declines. So, but until then, have a great rest of the summer.
Thank you.
Do you have any fun summer vacation plans or anything?
We've already done it. We're getting ready to go back to school.
Back to school season. Yeah. I know. It's crazy.
It is.
Time flies. Do your kids feel like time flies?
Oh, yes.
Do they?
They're already bummed that we've only got about 2 weeks of summer.
Yeah. See, ours are teenagers now. So for them, like they're used to it. Time's fly. I'm like, you have no idea, buddy.
Yeah.
It flies faster when you get older.
Oh, it does.
So, all right, Shona, until next time, thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks once again to my friend Shona for joining us and discussing long-term care concerns. Folks, you are not alone. These conversations are tough to have. They just are. We don't like talking about losing control. We don't want to talk about our loved ones' inability to make decisions on their own. We don't want to think about having to care for our loved ones. But these are conversations we need to have. Because if we don't make these decisions for ourselves and for our loved ones, somebody else is going to make those plans for you. If you don't have a plan in place, you don't put a plan in place, guess what? A plan does exist for you nonetheless. You just chose to let it not be the plan of your choice. That's a problem. We need to have these conversations, and you don't have to have them alone. Have them with your children. Have them with your spouse. Make sure your goals and objectives are well known in advance while you can, because crisis mode planning, quite frankly, stinks. We don't want to plan in crisis mode. We don't want to put our families through that stress. We don't want to put ourselves through that stress. We want to make sure we have a plan in advance that dictates life on our terms. That is the crucial conversation. You don't have to have that conversation alone. Have that with a professional you know and you trust, okay? It is a financial element to it. Absolutely. You should be having this conversation with your financial partner in your life. And if you do not have one, why not? You need to. If you don't have one and it needs to be a different conversation because you're not having these discussions, you probably need to make sure you think about that relationship. If you don't have that relationship in your life, that is what this profession is all about. Helping people solve these concerns and making sure you understand those options. It's what we focus here on at Serenity Wealth Management. It is our duty, it is our privilege to serve the community we're a part of in concerns relating to your goals, your objectives, your legacy, your strategy. It all has to do with financials. Of course it does. But the conversation doesn't start there. We use our financials to fund our goals and objectives and protect what we can, protecting our legacy and our memories and making sure we can enjoy experiences along the way. That's what Serenity Wealth is all about. That is the serenity you deserve. Check it out now. Serenity Wealth Now socials. Tune in each week right here. News Talk STL and Serenity Wealth Now social media outlets. Until next week, folks.
Serenity Now! This is Serenity Wealth Now with Chris Cooper. Request a free copy of Chris's latest book, The New Holistic Retirement, by visiting SerenityWealthNow.com.
Investment advice offered through Fortis Capital Advisors, LLC.